And what I love about the Swedish-Italian school is it's been proven over many, many years to be not only helpful in helping someone develop their voice, but also therapeutically. Lindquist was a pioneer in helping singers with vocal damage, and he was the first one to discover that these concepts could actually be helpful to singers with vocal damage.
We have no relation to Alan Lindquist, and the claiming that he coached Birgit Nilsson in 1938 is also not right. And so I've told David Jones that that's not right. I knew her very well. I played at masterclasses with her several times, and I taught a lot to her. She had never been in Stockholm before 1941 when she started at the Academy of Music. And she had only had a local teacher in the south of Sweden. And then the first time she ever met Hislop was when she came to Stockholm in 1941. We should talk a little about, in the end, about Hislop and Hallis Ingebert, because there I got very interesting information concerning this NG position that we don't know about in Sweden either.
Yes, I'm excited to hear this part. This is the surprise. We may move straight into this. This famous NG is kind of it's central to the Swedish-Italian concept, I guess we could call it.
No, it isn't. A total misunderstanding about what they did. Because absolutely, in the way they work with the breathing, they didn't do inhalation exercises, they blew out. To learn to relax the muscles that keep a little tense most of the time, and to allow the diaphragm, which they knew was not a voluntary muscle principle, to act spontaneously and naturally like nature has done, so to speak, because you lack oxygen and then you can do it. The chest they widen consciously, but not this. The diaphragm they fix that by blowing out. And then one of the few places we can feel the diaphragm, it's not inside, it's when it connects to the solar plexus, because there are not nerve endings here. So they always connected emotional sensations to this inhalation, because it was easier to keep the inhalation opening alive, not thinking about it mechanically, but you put yourself in an emotional state of mind, happy, sad, even angry. It was always connected to that and not to the making of the sound. It was done before the sound to affect the sound. And this was one of the points that was the real thing with Dr. Blatt. He used, this was the place where he was very suggestive and using psychology and imaginations and so on. He had never studied with psychology with Sigmund Freud. That's also an American invention. It's not true. He just had studied medicine, and he was a good pedagogue, and he used psychology to get to things that are not really voluntary things to do. To make a detour, not to activate things that you don't want to have activated when you want certain things to be activated. And it was also considered that this type of making inhalations, blowing out and that they come in, connected to an emotional state of mind, automatically open the throat. It connected to the system going. And they actually talked about this keeping, they were not talking about stretching in any direction, just keeping the sensation of inhalation down to this where the emotions are. You don't push it out, just let it be where it stays by itself. The second thing they did partly to open the throat, if you use that expression, or balancing the suspension mechanism of the larynx, if you use that expression. It wasn't based on the NG. They didn't talk about the tongue, neither when it came to articulation, nor when it came to sort of, they didn't talk about putting it in some position. They talked about what they did. You open your mouth just so much as you have to do to relax the muscles that bind it together. Not actually open it. Like a scissor. We naturally lose tongue. And then you say, ah, because then the Swedish vowel ah comes out without changing anything in the tongue. That's a neutral tongue. Ah. That sort of neutralized any tensions between here then.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why they did it partly then. But then, since they didn't use the kuleglott, they rejected that to get vocal cords to start. They did also not say what linguists claims that the cords should close after inhalation but before the onset. The cords stayed open after inhalation as a continue inhalare la voce, and then they closed it with the Bernoulli effect, with HN. NG or which you call in Swedish. It's not two letters in Swedish, it's just one. Or a hubbing. And it was done like this. The tongue was put in neutral with the ah. Ah. And then the tongue and the jaw doesn't move, but the palate goes down to touch the tongue. Ah. That was the way the NG was done. And now comes something very interesting. In America, they talk about is this going to do when they go from the NG part instead from the vowel part? So the NG position is in the middle of the tongue, or in the back of the tongue, or in the front of the tongue. Now you know. This week I've been in contact with a singer, Swedish one living in Germany, who suddenly said that I've got a lot of tapes, 400 cassette tapes at home in no order, and one of them is an interview with Ingebert, Haldis Ingebert Isene, where she's very old, sitting in the old people's home in Norway, where she talks about clocks and other things, and then she shows this how they did the NG, and then she says it connects the palate to the back of the tongue because you keep it in the R position. It just happens by itself. Now they close the mouth without opening, not they close it so that the connection where the palate goes down and touches the back of the tongue is in the same place. So they shut off the resonance in the mouth. And then it was very strongly stressed on with this humming, inhalation sensation behind it and under it. Then but this did also not say that the vowel started in the chords. He said that the vowel tone started in the chord, and it was this primary sound. They called it the primary sound because they didn't split up voice in register and unite it again. They talked about finding a tone that worked somewhere in the middle when you did this, and it sounded freely. And you started around that a little. And then the next thing was, so you use the NG first to find a place where it connects, then you closed and kept that connection there. Then you started to think of the vowel until you sort of heard the vowel inside that sound because you wanted that function in the vocal cords. So then they transferred the function of the humming to the vowel, so to speak, the sound of the But then they said, when it goes to vowel here, so they kept the inhalation feeling under, they kept the sucking feeling behind, and they talked about a bow going from where it starts. Actually, the sound starts. It was a very front and mask school, by the way. which also is not what is claimed in America. If they talked about this, there was a connection with the silver thread, as they called it. And behind that was resonance. And then they meant, since the palate goes up when the vowel comes and gets away from the back of the tongue. And they checked by doing this, so it wasn't nasal. Then they said, when the palate closed, you kept still the function in the chords from the humming when you went to the vowel. But the locked-in air, you were not feeding more air, as it is claimed in America. They said that the locked-in air vibrates. It's not really together with modern science, but not totally against it either. I talked to Johan Sundberg about this. He just says that it's so little. It's so little space, so it doesn't give very much. But that was the first resonator. Because the palate locked. The second one was imaginatory under here to keep the inhalation sensation alive. So the pressure didn't. That's very Italian actually. You put a place where the inhalation and the compressions meet a little lower than here. The third resonator, if you did that correctly, this would be open. And the throat would open automatically by itself. We didn't talk about opening the throat. They just talked about keeping it loose. And then the fourth resonator was here when you went to the vowel. So you see, when you come to the whole story about the NG and how it was used, it's totally misinterpreted in America. That's why I didn't understand when they were talking about this NG position and speeding air up there and so on, because they also claimed very early you shouldn't care about mouth and tongue movements when articulating, when making diction, because it's too difficult. Even the first one of them always said, with the movements of the tongue in speaking and singing, what man wants has nothing to do, because it's too difficult. So instead they concentrate on imagine the vowel, thinking, using the language center of the brain, and then just keeping this loose and no movements behind the place where the tongue met with the palate went down. Besides that point, that was the turning point of the tongue, so to speak. There was not allowed to be any movements with diction, because then it would disturb the freedom here. But otherwise, it was done just by thinking it, and you trusted that the brain would tell this what to do without overactivating swallowing muscles or chewing muscles or something like that. When they had done this preparatory thing, they always went to small vowels, the closed and small ones. And in the end, they went to the open ones. But Ingvar started to do, after a while, but directly to the R vowel, but it's connected. And then it tends to become too big. And difficult to get up. But you heard when I did this also. I don't change very much here when I go up. And I don't consciously alter the vowel, but it will alter by itself. And the language was holy, and even Flaxa said once in an interview when she heard a soprano changing the text of the vowels. Why can't she learn to sing the right vowels, the right words? Does she sing? It's easier to sing the wrong ones. Place after place. Also in this report about the linguist teaching from the University in Texas, he talked only about this part. The Swedish school, they didn't talk about that. It was important to get a functioning vocal machine like this here, but they didn't talk about having a physical sensation down here. They actually said, put it as far away from this place as possible, not to activate the things you don't want activated. So that's why they use. That's why they use the the humming with HM, and the H and the M was supposed to come almost at the same time, not That's the way they got this, not Not at all that. Some of the things they claim in America, I can understand this with the NG position, but they turn it upside down. I finally understood where they got it from. But they start with trying to put the tongue in an active position.
Releasing the tongue, releasing the breath more.
With a sort of NG, and then connect that to, keep it close to that and connect that to other vowels. It wasn't that. They put, this people, Bratt put the tongue in a neutral position, and the jaw in a neutral position. And then the palate went down to that, where that was, to be able to start the sound in a humming function. And you see, I don't, no, it's the same sound for all of them. Then Bratt did another thing that the others didn't do. He always started with something called a melodramatic pathetic speaking voice. It was supposed to be a singing tone that lost the pitch, not an elevated, not a speech level singing. It's not the elevated talking voice that gets the pitch. No, it's the singing voice that loses the pitch. You see, it's very close to each other then, because it's tuned into the not so heavy function. And he used this to get to the legato, because if you very, very small movements, but it gets very clear what I'm saying, and it's on the legato all the time. And then they sort of put the singing tone that has lost the pitch and become a pathetic melodramatic speaking voice. They put it back to pitch. The way of doing the text. This was also a way of combining the emotion of the inhalation with the intellect connected to the words. And what united it was the primary humming function that was not nasal when you transferred it to vowels. So if you read this report from Corpus Christi and compare what I'm saying now with the information you get on home pages all over the world from people who claim to connect with this school, you hear that it's very different what I'm saying. I'm not discussing if these people were right or wrong.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it. I just tell what they were doing, and I think if you claim that you teach according to what they were doing, you should do that also, not something else.
Sure. The year was 1973. I was 23 years old, and I was suffering from a lot of vocal problems myself. Then I was hired at a university at night to teach in the theater department.